Is live from the table, the official podcast of the world-famous Comedy Cellar, come at you on SiriusXM 99 Raw Comedy, formerly Raw Dog, now Raw Comedy. I think it changed for the better because I thought Raw Dog was a bit vulgar. This is Dan Natterman. I'm here with Periel Ashenbrand. Noam has, well, I don't say he has the night off. He's out of town. I don't know where he is. Where is he?
He's on vacation.
Oh, he's on vacation. Okay. Where? I'm curious.
I don't remember.
Okay, doesn't matter. So it's me and Perry Allen. We're expecting Regina DeCicco in a few minutes, but right now it's just me and Perry L. I'm back from. Did we have a podcast last week? I was away last week.
Yes, we did. Who did we have? Oh no, we didn't because it was Valentine's Day.
Oh, okay, I was in Florida for a week. I had a few gigs down there. But I must say that I kind of get the Florida thing, you know. I could see myself being a snowbird. I mean, maybe I'm a bit young for that, but I find that the winter I don't need it.
You don't need it.
No, I don't need it anymore. I guess I never really did.
What would you do?
And I'm happy to I mean, the problem with Florida is I don't know people there, so.
Well, there's a comedy scene there. You could, I'm sure.
Well, it's not as robust as it is here, to say the least.
But you could flit from show to show, sort of carve out a little.
I don't know. We had an Airbnb. I was down there with Dov Davidoff. I did 2 shows where I was opening for him. I have no ego. I'll open for anybody if the pay is reasonable.
Sure, why not?
At these communities, these Florida, they have these. I don't know if there's any other place in the world that has these, but it's like it's a bunch of houses and. In this gated community with a pool and tennis and all that shit, those communities.
Yeah.
They have and there's tons of them, and they have they bring in entertainment. So we did a couple of those, but we got an Airbnb right on the beach in Pompano Beach, and it's just.
And what was it?
Yeah, why am I in New York?
What was it like spending the week roommates with Dov?
It was all right. I mean, I prefer my own space, my own bathroom in particular. I found myself actually going to the public restroom down the block to do certain things, just because I'm uneasy doing certain things, where others can. Too much information, perhaps.
No. I mean, whether it's too much information or not. Why are you not booking an Airbnb with 2 bathrooms?
Because Dov booked it because it was his rodeo.
Okay.
And he invited me along and said, "Do you want to do these 2 shows for this money?" And I said, "Oh, that sounds pretty good. I'm going to be in Florida anyway because I had a show in Key Largo a couple days thereafter." So I was like, "Fuck it, I'll just go. I'll make a week of it in Florida."
But you could have ostensibly.
And he said, "I got us an Airbnb." I said, "Okay, great." And then the Airbnb, it was a beautiful location. I mean. It was worth the location, was worth the inconvenience.
Having to go to like a storage
I didn't have
unit
to
go take a shit.
Well, you don't have to be vulgar.
Well, I mean, Dan, for the love of God, call it what it is.
No, I don't want to call it what it is.
Certain things.
Yeah, certain things.
You think
I didn't have to do that. I chose to do that because I'm a modest person. And
you're not that modest.
In that regard, I am.
It's a little bit of a ruse. Like you say, like, oh, I like that they changed it to Raw Comedy because the other is a little vulgar. Now, anybody who knows you well and has really seen you.
I just think it's a vulgar name for what it is. I mean, there is raw, like, why name it that? There's no point. You can certainly have that kind of comedy on the channel, but you don't have to call it that because there's all kinds of comedy on the channel. So,
some of your jokes are vulgar.
Of course they are.
So
that's nothing to do with Nate. But I wouldn't. Yeah, some of my jokes are vulgar, but I wouldn't want it if the Comedy Cellar called itself, Balls to the Wall Comedy Club. I wouldn't like that.
You don't like that?
No, I think the name of the club should be classy, and you can have vulgar comedy inside.
You just want to keep it classy on the outside.
Yeah, I don't think that's ridiculous.
I didn't say it was ridiculous.
You can have a movie theater that shows rated R movies. You don't have to call the theater,
Go ahead.
I don't know. Think of something.
Go ahead.
Think of something. The Brown Eye movie. I don't know. Like the movie theaters have names like the Rialto, the Majestic. But you might show
What's
film in
the
there.
brown eye?
Well, you know what the brown eye is.
What's the brown eye?
You know what it is. I don't have to tell you what it is. I mean, I would tell you if I thought you didn't know, but you do know. So why are you asking?
It just seems like so specifically
Anyhow,
grotesque.
I like the beach. I like the warm weather. I like Florida, despite what everybody says about Florida, and people make fun of Florida, and Florida's the butt of every joke. But there's, it's warm and yeah.
I'm glad you had a nice
I
time.
visited my cousin Arlene. She lives in one of those communities.
Arlene.
Yeah, she's Canadian.
Do you think that that's what the brown-eyed girl was a reference to?
No, I think it was a reference to a girl with brown eyes. I don't think at all that that's what it was. And anyway, and other than that, in other natter news, since we're on me right now, and since I get to talk because Noam's not here, we don't have to talk about stuff that I'm ill-informed about, which is typically what happens, with Noam. And those certainly can be interesting episodes. I just don't have a lot to add.
Okay.
I got to do a speaking of Sirius, they don't play my shit anymore because I signed something with I don't know, this thing where they were trying to this.
What are you trying to
this
say?
This thing where they're trying to I don't know, hold out for more money or something. I don't know. I signed something and then they stopped playing my shit. So I don't know if it's related. This company was oh, they're playing our stuff on streaming and they're not compensating us properly. So, and anyway, a lot of people told me that if you sign that, then they stop playing you on Sirius. And
okay.
So I don't know if that has anything to do with it.
So would you rather?
So I need to tape something and then send it in, but not under the auspices of this. I'm not making any sense at all. You could probably
I don't know what you're talking about. Why would you rather have them play you and not get paid? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'd rather have them pay me and get paid.
Okay.
But they're not paying me. They were paying. I was making okay. Every month I would get money from them. And then they just kind of stopped on a dime playing my shit on Sirius.
Do you think that
people have told me, oh, that's because you signed this thing.
Do you think
this thing that they sent around saying, again, I'm not clear, but I know I signed something. I just don't remember. But the people told me that that's why they're not playing me anymore.
Do you think that this is the appropriate venue to be discussing that on Sirius?
Sure, I don't know. Yeah, why not?
Okay.
So I want to tape something here. They do those nights where they give people an hour.
Yeah.
And then tape it, and then go to Lenny Marcus because he's got he set up a record label, kind of a thing, and then just go through him, and maybe they'll start playing me again. But I think Regina is here.
Regina is here. I just spoke to her.
Okay.
She's
making her debut on.
She is making her debut. I like Natter News. I think that's a good addition to the.
Well, I wasn't pitching it as a segment necessarily.
Well, it's not bad as a segment, although you've got.
Well, but it's arguably it's not bad, but it doesn't fit in with the format because most of the time it's Noam talking to some reporter about things that Natter News wouldn't really.
We could do half hour
fit in,
after. We could do half hour.
Well,
after.
we were doing that.
Well, we could do it again.
Yeah, but it really wasn't. It wasn't getting us anywhere really. No.
Where are you trying to get?
A bunch of new listeners or whatever.
Oh, you don't know that.
Huh?
You don't know that.
No, but
you can't just do we did 8 episodes.
Yeah, but there was no movement of the needle, so I just want to put in the effort. Hello, Regina.
Hi, Regina. Hi, Regina. Dan, that's like going to the gym 8 times and saying that you saw no difference. You can't just record 8 episodes of a 30-minute podcast and be like, nothing changed.
But I didn't see any movement whatsoever. Regina DeCicco is with us.
Hi, Regina.
Hello. She's making her debut on Live from the Table. Noam, regrettably, is not here, so you don't get the full experience. On the other hand, maybe this is good news because Noam might try to steer the conversation into political areas.
Okay, so this could work out. This could work.
So
if
that's not your strong suit,
right?
Then maybe it's best she's not here. Regina DeCicco, she's a Comedy Cellar regular, and she is She does the warm up on The View.
I sure do.
And so, that's something we haven't delved into, I don't think, is the warm up thing. So maybe we should talk about that. That could be something we'll talk about. So let's do it.
Let's do it.
So a lot of comics make their money or make a substantial portion of their money or make pretty good money doing what's known as warm-up for TV shows, be they sitcoms, be they game shows, be they talk shows, or what have you. So tell us, if you would, what does a warm-up do, a warm-up comedian?
So I do a date. So
Wait, but first, come.
Whoa.
No, closer
the
to the mic. Closer to the mic.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes I feel like with my volume, I get nervous. I'm like, you sure you want to use this? But okay, perfect. So it's a daytime show for me. So I do before the show and then during commercials, which like the late night guys don't do commercials. So I do that. So then it's like keeping people like into it, excited, engaged. But then also I feel like I do all crowd work, essentially, is what I do with them. And then I'm just like, and the View is a little tough because obviously sometimes it's tough topics. So you're not really setting people up for a comedy show.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's like we're laughing and having a good time. And then it's like, okay, well, we're going to come in to no music. And the ladies are going to be seated at the table because it's like a terrible news day. So I feel like that's where I sort of get a weird balance of like super fun. And then also it can be a little traumatic.
So these audiences that go to see The View, where these people come from?
They come from all over. I guess the one thing about The View, too, is the show has Whoopi Goldberg. So you get literally people that want to see a movie star that are coming from all over the world to see Whoopi.
And they just write, it's free, and
It's
then
free.
they write in and they say, I want to be a guest at The View or something.
Well, now they do it all online, Dan. They don't write in anymore. No postcards.
Write in could be theoretically... one could write in online.
Well, I was just thinking there was a time, too, where you would have to do it like via postcard.
Right. So
to go to a show.
self-addressed stamped envelope to...
Right. It's wild to think how they did that. Now it's just like all email. So it's like, it's so much easier for them now, I would think. So
how many people are in the audience typically?
Around 180.
Okay.
It's like a full audience. And then you get a lot of tourists. So we get a lot of tourists. And there are regulars. My friends, there's a lot of people that are just retired in New York, and this is an activity. They do the talk show circuit.
So you see them, you recognize them
Yes,
in the audience.
yes.
What time is it taped?
It's live, 11 to 12. That's the other thing, too. Like, because it's live, it has to go. So, like, I don't really usually ever get stranded out there because it's like, well, the show has to be live at 11. So, like, let's move. I like live TV for that reason. There's not, like a sitcom, those guys could just really get stuck out there. I mean, every show that's taped, the warm-up could sort of be there forever. I get lucky.
So the object of the game with warm-up is to keep them engaged whilst during the commercial break or I know in a sitcom, they have to, I guess, change the camera angles and shit. Or maybe they don't because if it's the 3 cameras.
Right.
Anyway, whenever they're doing whatever they have to do, the audience needs to be entertained and kept awake and alert. And, and your job is to do that.
Right. And then the ladies, too, it's like they also have to be looking at cards and they're finding out what the questions are for the interview. So, like, they're not always free to engage with the audience either. So it's like, no matter what, you'll have me. Maybe you'll get the ladies, but you always got me.
And so how much of, you said it's mostly crowd work, but you also do some of your jokes, your pre-written, regular jokes in there too?
Sure. And I feel like, too, it's like this thing happens where like sort of the crowd work jokes almost write themselves. You know what I'm saying? Like there's enough scenarios where it's like, we'll pull this one back out again. Like what you say at one time and it's like, that'll work.
Right. Crowd work is not necessarily crowd work.
Exactly.
Crowd work is sometimes prepackaged.
Right. It's happened before. It's not new.
I'll give you an example. I'll give the audience an example, just a peek into the comedy world. Very often I'll say who's here from somewhere else. And like not America. Mm-hmm. And somebody will say, I'm here from somewhere in Eastern Europe is not uncommon. And I'll say, oh, okay, well, that's I'm sorry. Let me back up. I'll say, who here is from Europe? We get a lot of Europeans here. And somebody will say, oh, I'm from Poland. Or I'm from Estonia. Or I'm from one of those places. And I'll say, well, okay, you got me. That's Europe. Technically, you're right. But, it's not Europe like when Americans say, we're going to Europe. It's not that Europe. Nobody laughed here, but at the shows, they often laugh robustly. But it seems like it's off the cuff, but I've done it a million times when someone is from one of those countries.
Exactly.
So that's an example of crowd work that really isn't.
Right, exactly.
That's because you've seen the same shit
Right.
we've been do this every night, and the same things come up over.
Right.
And over.
You've asked the question, and so you're not the first person to answer that way. Usually.
Right. Like the first time I heard somebody say, "Hey, are you in?" Somebody had their feet on the stage, and then someone said, "Are you in show business?" And the guy says, "No." And he goes, "Well, then get your feet off the stage." The first time I heard that, I was like, "This guy's a genius."
Yes.
And then, at the second or third time, like, oh, okay.
Right.
Maybe he's not so much of a genius, but it's
not
like a magic trick. The audience doesn't know that it's been done before.
Not to make the entire episode about Lenny Marcus, but
Might as well.
Might as well.
Lenny told me, Lenny told me a long time ago, the only reason you ever should ask a question really is of the audience is for something like that. Like you have,
that's one point of view.
yeah.
I
Let's
think
let Lenny Marcus's point of view.
Okay, that's fine. I don't know that that's necessary. I think maybe what I will go as far as to say is you should have a backup plan. So you don't just stutter and stammer and say, "Well, I don't have a joke for that."
Right.
Which, by the way, always gets a laugh. Whenever a comic says,
True.
if the audience says something, and the comedian will just say, "Well, I don't have a joke for that," that always gets a laugh anyway.
Right.
But I prefer not to do that. But I usually have no matter where they're from, there's something you can say.
You can do something. Something pops into your head.
Well, or that you have a backup plan. No matter what,
So how much
you can always ask another question.
Right.
Comedians will often say if they don't get what they want from that question, they'll say, "Oh, well, what do you do for?" They'll say, "What do you do in
this
Toronto or whatever the place is?" Meaning, what do you do for a living? And then maybe they'll get something with that.
Right.
So anyway, that's crowd work for you,
That's
101 in
crowd
a
work,
nutshell.
everybody.
And sometimes something will come up that's truly, completely off the cuff and inspired. And
Right.
It can be amazingly fun.
Sure.
too.
Sure.
Like the gems that come out of that.
But
It's a different skill though, right? Like
Yes.
it's
For sure. You're really like trusting the process almost. You're
Yeah,
like, I
I
have to
think
trust
that-
you. Because I think we probably all picked the wrong person when you're like, okay, great. Like, let me just move on. And, or I feel like now people want that moment a lot. I feel like people in the crowd are now giving like what they think is a very funny answer. Like I've been getting that a little more. And then I'm like, oh, you're watching too many videos. Where it's like your honest answer is always going to be the best answer.
yeah.
But please
So how
don't
much
try to-
time is it? So you get there and then how much time do you do before
So I have 15 minutes before the show, and then it's 20 minutes of commercial breaks.
in one fell
So
swoop?
how much of your day is devoted to this?
It's still not a lot of time, to be honest. I mean, I get there at 10, and then I'm
10
basically
a.m.
done at 12. If
Oh,
there's no
Jesus.
post-tape. No, it's a while.
It's an
I will
amazing
never
gig.
complain about.
I mean, you make
it's amazing.
teachers
I know.
look like hard work.
I know.
Well, actually, teachers, I guess they got to do great homework, so I guess they are. I mean, I don't want to.
Well, they also have to deal with
I don't wanna
actually
malign
teaching.
teachers.
Right.
Haven't you picked something
A
else?
lot of teachers also. A lot of teachers also just fucking run. They just run the fucking same lecture every year.
Oh my God. They're also dealing with like school shooters and like
Not to mention they're teaching us shit we don't use. Are they overpaid? I don't know.
We've uncovered something, Dad. If this is pent up with you.
No, I'm
and
just
you're-
I'm just saying. Look, I couldn't stand in front of a group of
No.
obnoxious people like myself as I was at that age.
Right.
But some of them are just fucking phoning it in. They're just like, and then George Washington did, and they did the same thing last year. Each day. But whatever. But I think math teacher is probably the hardest because it's really you really got to interact. Anyway,
And then we're just like, yes, keep going.
I mean, of all of the jobs to malign,
Right, I'm like, we need
Well,
to
look,
discuss something else.
I don't use any of that. What do you want from me? You taught me shit I don't use.
well, it's not- they didn't
I'm
decide
supposed
what
to.
to
I'm
teach.
supposed to think your market value is higher than. I mean, the typing teacher. I use that.
well, if you weren't a comedian, you might use math.
Nah,
like if you
yeah,
went
you-
into like finance.
Okay,
or-
math. Fine, math. Math. Yes, math.
Okay, what else? English.
Reading,
right?
typing.
You don't use reading.
I use reading.
Never. Dan's never doesn't read.
Yeah, I use
I
reading.
mean,
but
you wrote a fucking book.
and I lost money. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Mrs. Brose.
And I think now we've gotten to the point of where this is all going back to Mrs. Brose, isn't it? In this book.
Anyway, no, look, teachers. No, but they inspire us to love learning. I guess
Sure.
more than
Do you remember a great teacher that you had? Don't we all remember?
Well, there was Mr. McWilliams, he, you know, he
Sex
was
ed?
no, he was our English teacher, and you know, he was fun because he treated us like he didn't treat us like students. He treated us like colleagues almost. You know,
Sure.
he talked to us. You know, anyway, he was a drunk, but anyway,
Also inspiring.
Oh,
well, we're getting off topic.
are we?
Oh, yeah. I was gonna say that.
So, 2 hours a day,
Yes.
and this
How
is
fun. I want to come watch
Oh,
you.
you should. Oh, definitely. Oh my gosh. Yeah, everybody can come.
what proportion of your income is derived from this?
Most of it.
Most of it. Okay, yeah. So it's a good paying gig.
It's a good paying gig,
Okay, so
and I do love it.
how do I get you out and me in?
This teacher talk's not going to help, Dan.
Would you like to do a job like that? Because you often complain that you hate doing stand up.
Well, I don't love it,
What
but
about people? Dan? I'm getting.
if I'm going to do it, might as well do it. You know, make good money and not leave the city.
Well, that you do that a lot as it is.
Yeah, but I do it at the Cellar, but the Cellar doesn't pay anything. Cellar doesn't pay enough money to live. I got to go out of town and do shit.
So you're saying that if you could get a job,
If I could get a job that's in town,
yeah, if
that's a light load
Right.
per day and pays good money, I think I would. But how did you get into that?
I got very lucky. I had never done it before I auditioned for the job. So somebody, so they had asked like just people around the office if there were stand-ups that they liked, and somebody submitted. One of my friend's sisters worked there and like submitted my Gotham Access Live
Amazing.
clip, and then they liked me and they brought me in to do the job. And it was one of those things like I did it and I'd never done it before. But did you ever have that happen when you do something and all of a sudden you're like, wait, I know how to do this, even though I'd never done it before, and it just felt so right. So the first time I auditioned for 2 days.
Well, I guess sex.
Yeah. I knew exactly how to, but that kind of a feeling where it was like, wait, I know what I'm doing. I know how to do this.
Yeah.
now you have to be very clean when you're doing
Yes.
this, right?
So I feel like there's a little innuendo, obviously, because it's still people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's always like innuendo, but like I don't curse, which is actually easier than I thought. Like I'll curse at night, but it's not so hard not to curse, honestly.
Well, with me, it's not so much like when people tell me I have to be clean
Right.
for a particular gig. That's the easy part.
Right.
Is being clean. The hard part is avoiding controversial topics, drug references, politics,
Right.
these sorts of things that are going to offend them more than the F word. They'll say, "Oh, don't use the F word."
Right, but-
the F word is
Right.
nothing.
Yeah.
The F word is nothing. An abortion joke. Now that, which they don't tell you, don't say an abortion joke because they're not thinking about
Right.
it. They don't even know necessarily themselves.
Right.
But I
It's so
know
true. Right.
what
You
they don't want to hear.
yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that's just off the table.
Right, which is fine. Right? 'Cause
Yeah.
that's why I sort of like
Yeah,
make it
right.
about the audience, because then it's like, okay, it's about you. That's not wrong, and then they feel involved.
Yeah, you can't.
they
You
like
can't
that.
do
They
like
love
Trump shit.
Right.
You know,
No rape jokes.
Right. No.
certainly not. And drug. You know, you can't. You know.
No.
And obviously abortion and various this sorts of Ukraine, Israel, Palestine.
The thing is it's almost like you're doing like a private corporate gig every
Oh, that's the funny way to
show,
think about it.
which
But
you
they are paying attention, so it's good.
which you also hate. I'd like to mention.
I hate all of it. I'd rather stay home and collect the residuals. But you are like, for that kind of a job, you know, people wouldn't think of me for that because I'm a low energy comic. Whereas Regina's like
Sure.
high energy.
Yes.
There's a party going on. I'm the host, and you're all invited.
Yes.
And you do that. You bring that here as a host, as the MC.
Yes.
Because that's mostly what you do here, right? I don't know if you do.
I do. Yeah, I have a
just,
spot tonight. I do both.
You do
I do
both,
both.
okay. And
Even to like when I said to Esty, it's like because I do warm up during the day, I'm like hosting is so easy for me because it's like, oh, I already did that today. Like it's such a smooth transition for me. Like I'm always like, oh yeah, no, I could just host like at the drop of a hat, sort of, because it's like great, yeah, I'm ready to go.
but do you enjoy? Because I had a host a couple weeks ago because somebody didn't show up, and I said, okay, well, you know, I'm not going to say no, but I don't love it.
Right.
How was it? I remember that. I remember when you were going to do it. How was it?
Oh, I just don't love hosting
Why not?
because, well, the first 10 minutes are okay. That's when you go up on stage before anybody, and and you do 10 minutes straight through.
Right.
And sometimes they're still seating people, and people don't know exactly, they're still chatting, whatever. So, but it's okay. The part I don't like is going up in between each comic and doing like a minute or two, and like there's no momentum. It's like you kind of go up there, and sometimes they know, oh, this is the MC, so I'm going to go to the bathroom. I just don't love that part of it.
Right.
And so that's mainly what,
Yeah, I feel like for me too, it's like when it's a skill that you have, you see how it benefits the show. And I feel like,
that's right.
Right, and then there's comics are so great, like especially here where they'll always say they're grateful. Like if I am hosting, like I have comics thank me, which I think was so nice when people do that. But it's like they're like, oh, you're hosting, great, or like I feel safe or good, and that's such a wild thing. But it's like, oh, thanks, because there's times when I've seen people host where I want to be like, oh my God, just let me do it, because you're sort of like I'll just because it's like you I don't mind like eating it a little bit or whatever we have to do, or getting the room together, that like taking that challenge too, like I don't mind. And then it's like you get to go on a fun ride together.
I used to be really scared to host, and now I love it. But it's true, your loyalty is sort of more to the show
Right.
Yes.
during the
Well,
show.
what do you think? Okay, so the goal of the MC is to make everybody else look good and to make the audience as good as possible for the other comics. What do you think is the best way to do that? Is to tell, like, Mike Yard just tells jokes. He doesn't talk to the audience at all. But most comedians will do the where you're from, who is from here, blah, 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 blah. So a combination of the two. What do you think is the best?
A combination is always good, only because you want to set the other comics up, because the next comic's probably going to come up with jokes.
Right.
So I've heard some comics say, like, if the host doesn't do any jokes, then it makes it a little harder. I mean, I've talked to enough comics too about what they kind of like or don't like, but then I feel like it's like the high energy, being likable to, like, I feel like being likable is like a huge part of it, where it's like, oh, good. And then it's also like that safe space of, and usually sets don't go wrong, but like over the years, I've had like a comedian, like once in a while, someone will just do something and you're like, oh God, what did you just do? What was that? And then it's like you come back and it's like, oh, thank the host is back. Like there's some sort of a safety in the host for the audience too, if like a comic goes rogue or like makes a weird choice or something happens. It's like winds up being like, oh, the host, oh, my friend is back. Oh, good. Like here comes my friend. So I feel like, it's a combination.
Yeah,
I feel like that works.
You like kind of hold the room together.
Yeah. Right, if something goes on, and like normally it's fine, like especially like here at the Cellar, it's usually like, oh, everybody's great, it's easy to host, but like going all over, I mean, we've all seen enough happen, or things can go wrong, and it's like, I got you.
Now, here's a question: the comic goes up and he does about 10 minutes or whatever, and then you got to bring on the next comic. However, now some MCs will say, "Are you ready to start the show?" Implying that the show hasn't really started.
Right.
Other comedians say, "Are you ready for your first comic?" Implying that they themselves are not a comic. And other comedians saying, "Are you ready for your next comic?" Those are generally one of the three. Now, I prefer, "Are you ready to start the show?" Even though technically as an MC, the show's already started, but I feel like you're the MC, you're outside the show.
Right.
That's how or "Are you ready for your first comic?"
No.
That's how I think is the best way to do it. Now, how do you do it?
I say next.
You say next.
Only because then I think it's that thing of like, you don't want to act like, it's like you're part of it too.
Yeah.
Right. But it is a funny thing when people are like, oh, you're such a great host. And you're going to be like, well, I'm also a comic. But right, it's like but now it's sort of different at this stage or this level. But I remember like hosting early on, or like people would just like give you those backhanded compliments of like,
well, some people,
you're a really good comic.
Well, some people will say to the host, "Oh, you should do comedy." Because they don't don't
understand.
They don't think the host is a comic,
right.
even though the host was making jokes.
Right. No, it's
and
true.
they were laughing.
Right.
Somehow, because the host is seen as somehow outside the show.
Sure. People do that at The View all the time too, actually, in the audience. They'll be like, you are so funny.
Right.
You should be a stand-up comedian.
Oh my God, that's
right after
so
you've done
funny.
stand-up comedy.
For 20 minutes.
Or sometimes someone will be like, oh my gosh, I feel terrible saying it. You really missed your calling. You should have been a comic. But the best part is if the crew is around, they love it. And they're like, Regina, this lady's onto something. You should do stand-up comedy. So the crew will be like, right? Shouldn't she? They'll all like double down. But it is one of those things like, that is what we were doing. And this lady the other day, she's like, no, I know that. But I meant professionally.
Oh my God.
And I said, there was a time when I thought this show with Whoopi Goldberg was professional, but not today.
Yeah, I mean, I've done cruise ships, and I actually have one coming up. I haven't done them in years, but I do have one coming up. But people would they thought that I was being paid by getting a free cruise.
Oh, that's funny. Right.
Yeah, like, were you kidding me?
Yeah, there's so little people understand. I feel like about all of it, like who we are, what we do, what it means.
That's
You
why I
just
feel
roll with
like
the
you
punches.
shouldn't say, "Are you ready for your first comic? Are you ready to start the show?" Because the show has started.
I
and
know, but somehow
don't you want
can't-
to inform them? Like,
Well, look, it's not about my ego.
no, not at all.
I just somehow feel, and I can't even articulate why. Somehow it just feels more right to say, "Are you ready to start the show?"
But the show has already started.
I understand. I get it. But somehow, it feels I just Max. What do you think? Max is our. I don't know if you have you met Regina. Max
I hear Max.
Max is our sound
I
man.
love it.
I usually, if I'm hosting, I would say your next comic.
Mm-hmm. It could be our self-preservation as hosts too, to be like, we're also a part of this show.
No, I think it's also to like let the audience feel like this is all happening as one cohesive experience.
But I like the idea of, hey, I'm outside the I'm like presenting the show. You know, I'm presenting a show.
No.
So I'm not the show because I'm presenting the show.
No, you're part of the show.
Or I'm like the pre-show.
No, you're not.
Or I'm
you're
like,
starting the
know,
show. You're doing 10 minutes of stand-up.
You're not wrong. I can't say you're wrong. And yet in my gut, in my heart.
But I feel like if you've got them to where you need them, when you say next comic, they will get crazy.
Yeah.
They'll be so excited.
I don't know that it makes any difference whatsoever in
Sure.
terms of the quality of the show, but that's how I see
That's
it.
funny.
And-
I say next. That's what he
Okay,
said.
all right.
Well, the rest of us say next. And so
Okay.
You might want to try that next time.
Fine. I don't think it makes a difference either way. And you do it.
Are you excited for your cruise?
yeah, where's it going?
No. The reason I'm doing is because it's only I think it's only 2 days. Normally I would do a week.
Sure.
So now they have this new thing on Princess Cruises where you only have to do 2 days, and it pays the same money as a week.
Oh.
So I'm getting on in Jamaica and getting off like 2 days later in Cozumel, I think. So I'm not getting on at the beginning and leaving at
Okay.
the end, which is what I had done in the past.
Sure.
I'm getting on in the middle and leaving in the middle. So we'll see, but
And you're not excited about it?
no. Well, I'm not typically excited about
Those things?
Anything.
stand-up comedy in general.
Yes.
But I like when I'm done. That's enjoyable.
Sure.
The done part.
Sure.
I thought, Regina, you don't know me, well, but I thought I was going to be a sitcom star. I figured I'd do a couple of years of this shit,
Right.
and they give me a TV show.
Yeah.
A la Seinfeld. I mean, Seinfeld had been doing it, say, 10, 11 years, whatever, when he got his show.
Okay.
Which seemed like a long time at that time, but it turns out it's not that long.
No.
Because the average comic here at the Cellar is, even relatively new comics have been doing it longer than 10, 11
Right,
years. How long have you been doing it?
No, probably close to 15 now.
You're at the close to 15.
Yeah.
And you're like, you're one of the newer people.
Right. Here. Yeah. Here.
So it used to be that 10, 11 years in stand-up was a long time.
Right.
It was a different era.
I would like.
I mean, Roseanne maybe was 8 years in when she got her TV show.
Okay, listen. I'm going to throw you out a really wild idea.
The Dice Man, when he got famous, he was maybe 12, 13. I mean, nothing. Like, I don't even want to say the number. The number is so horrifying.
You know what? Whenever you go on this thing, it enrages me so much.
Well, okay.
Why don't you write a fucking sitcom? We live in...
I have written a sitcom. It's not,
All right.
I mean, I've done that.
All right, so...
That's not how it works.
Okay, so...
I'll tell you how it works. You want to know how it works? I'll show you.
No,
I'll tell you. It doesn't work like you
So,
write a
and-
sitcom and people say, this is the greatest sitcom ever. I got to fucking produce this sitcom. It doesn't work that way. Here's how it works. You got 80 million followers on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, and they say, I don't care what you write. You got 80 million followers. You can fucking shit on a napkin. And I'll say, this is great.
Right, that's not sustainable, though, because if it's not actually great, then...
But
it's
it
like,
might. But I'm saying no one's going to produce a sitcom based on a script that they don't know
You know
what's
how many
good.
shows have been made off of like shorts that people have
Yeah, the
put-
shorts that went online, I got a billion followers, a billion views.
Well,
So
the
you got-
game has changed, I feel like, to your point. It's not like...
But even back in the day,
Okay.
Even back in the day, they didn't give you a deal. Back they used to give people $200,000, $300,000 development deal, they call it.
Right.
Which means they own you for like a year or two, and then they're going to try to make a sitcom.
Right.
Now, why did people get development deals? Because they wrote a script that everybody thought was great? No, because they would be seen in doing stand-up, and the executives would say, we like this stand-up comic. They have a point of view, whatever they have.
Right.
And we will find writers for this comic, writers that we know, and we'll try to, put together a sitcom for this comic. That's how it worked in those days, back up through the early 2Ks, or maybe up even a little bit further. But that's how it worked back then. It never worked that you wrote a sitcom and somebody read it and said, oh my, holy shit, this guy. That just never
right,
how it
but
worked.
now you have the opportunity that you could actually
Well, you're
feasibly
saying-
and realistically write, produce.
Well, if you want to do that, yeah.
For no money, Dan.
For no
You could
money.
do it all.
Well, maybe.
No, but and quite honestly, like all bullshit aside, it would probably be brilliant and hilarious, and every single great comic would be thrilled to work on it. So I think that you like to complain.
That's true. That doesn't exclude the possibility that I'm right. But in any case, well, I don't know. I think the easier thing is just try to go viral on TikTok, Instagram, what have you. Now, how are you doing on the social media?
I don't do a lot. I should do more on social media. And I don't know if it's because I have the safety of the day job that I don't push as hard or like post clips the way that I should. I know I should be more active. Like I'm not playing the game as much as I should. Not playing the game. I think it's just how it works.
I mean, I think a lot of it is also people that got in early. Maybe they started doing that.
Sure,
the
right
first
away.
comics that started to do that, I think, had an advantage. That I don't know. Like there's always somebody that kind of pioneers it. Like on Twitter, this guy Rob Delaney was like the first comic to kind of become the Twitter guy,
Right.
And so he got like a lot of attention from Twitter, from tweeting. So I don't know, but anyway, yeah, we're talking about. All right,
I'm on this thing where I'm like, you should
You're
write.
fired up. You're
I
so
am.
fired up.
It would be so good.
well, maybe.
Unbelievable.
But now you have this gig. I mean, how long you been at it?
5 years.
Oh, okay, so it's like a long term. You could ride it out. I mean, I don't know how much longer the
I mean, I feel like the view is doing well, so that's great.
yeah, and they're probably not going to get rid of you because
They seem to like me.
so you can't
is good.
you can't.
So I don't travel a lot
can't
during
leave
the year.
town, yeah.
So it was funny when I first got the job there. They were like, "Oh, like it's gonna mean you can't do colleges anymore during the week." And I remember being like, "Oh, I'm an adult. Like, no, I don't need to have chicken fingers for dinner on a Wednesday in nowhere, Pennsylvania. Let's do this job instead." Like I was so happy. I was happy to kind of leave that world too. I feel like every college you did, you're like, "Well, the check will clear, but why am I here?"
Yeah, I did like one college years ago. I think it was in Maine. What's the big college in Maine? There's like a famous college in Maine, Bowdoin or
Yes.
Grinnell or one of the. No,
Whatever.
Grinnell's Iowa.
Bowdoin, I
I
think.
think it was Bowdoin. And I had to do an hour, and I was relatively new. I mean, I was probably relatively new. I was probably 10 years in,
Right.
but that seems relatively new. Like I
Sure.
said,
Sure.
and I just didn't have an hour, and it was tough.
Yeah.
And then they wrote it was a scathing review.
Oh.
Oh my
A
goodness.
review
Yeah, I don't. I guess in their college
paper,
paper
whatever.
or whatever. But
I would love to read that.
yeah, but
Let's find that. Do the internet.
yeah. So anyway, I did this thing, this NACA.
Yes,
What's the-
sure. There's NACA and then there's APCA. So then there's a couple different ones.
So
you can
NACA
showcase.
is this thing where you perform like all these college
Yeah.
students that are like on the college entertainment
Yes.
committee or whatever.
Yes.
They come to a play. It's like a conference, and they watch all the acts, and then they
Yeah.
book the acts that
right.
they like.
The ACT showcase.
Yeah, so I did the Southeast Conference with a lot of like Christian schools, like
Mm-hmm.
Georgia, Alabama. I don't know why. This is the only one. Like you submit your tape to the well, back then it was
Sure.
a tape. It was literally a VHS tape. You submit it, and then they pick you or not. So I did the Southeast Conference, and I had to pay my own dime to get their
Right.
hotel and all that. And I thought I had a good set. I think he did 20 minutes or something, but I didn't get any work, and I never got into the college market. But But you were big in the college.
I wasn't big, but I was doing it. But those conferences were so funny too, because then it's like there was a lot of like hypnotists.
Yeah, you had everything.
magicians,
Right, yeah.
Like the cover band. It is funny.
Everything.
You're always like, oh, there's a whole world here that I don't know about. And I feel like hypnotists were really popular. They were like really having a moment. Hypnotists. And then the kids love it.
Yeah, and magicians.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
And I don't know if they have dancers, but
No,
anything you
right.
might, any entertainment you
Right.
might have at a college.
Yeah.
I've understood that a lot of comics have really stopped liking to do the college circuit.
I don't think anybody liked it.
No,
It's
but
that
like
it
with all
paid-
this like political correctness and
Well,
stuff,
that's not helping. Yeah,
No.
it's just like it's not fun.
but I don't
at
think it
all.
was ever fun.
No, I don't think so either.
But it was a good paycheck. Like for
Yes.
a lot of comics that like very new, but they were young, and so because they
Yeah.
were young, they had a certain connection with college students, and they were able to make like $1,000 a gig or
Right,
something.
sure. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I can pay the rent with
Yeah.
this like one. If I just get a couple of these, like I'm gonna be rolling in it.
Yeah, and so a
Yeah.
lot of comics that was that was how they initially stopped having to have a day job.
Yes.
Was these college gigs. But I don't think anybody ever liked them.
No, and then I mean, sometimes it could be like noon in the
Yeah,
cafeteria,
right.
like a noon. I mean, they would. I remember one time I had to do one. My brother came with me. It was in Savannah, Georgia, and it was their like midnight breakfast because the kids were like studying for finals.
Okay.
So they took me early to the cafeteria and they like flicked all the lights on. They're like, "This is where your show will be." And my brother was like, "I don't know what this is, and I can't watch. I'm gonna be somewhere else." He's like, "This is so insane to me." And it's like they're trying to study for finals, and you're like, "Hey," like trying to tell your jokes while they're getting pancakes. But then you're like, "Whose idea was this?" But you knew the check would come
Yeah.
and it would clear and you could leave. And then
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't have to think about it anymore.
And they would make you do an hour usually, these
Yes.
colleges, which is like a lot of time.
Yeah.
Especially for newer comics.
Sure.
You know, but it's a really long time.
Right. And I remember one time realizing I could, and it wasn't really crowd work per se, but one time they told me they thought the school was haunted. And then I was like, oh, has anyone seen a ghost? And then somebody raised their hand. I was like, would you like to tell us the story? And then there was like another kid. I was like, also, please tell us the story. And I'm like watching the minutes go by. I'm like, look at, yes. Oh, here's something we can do.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, but that's like the only, like in the world of stand-up comedy, you always have to do your time because that's the only way you might not get paid.
Right.
Because they
right.
can't say, "Oh, you weren't funny." Well, okay, but you didn't say I had to be
Right,
funny.
but
You
the
just said-
time would be the
you know,
grounds for it. Right, you didn't do the
Yeah.
60
Don't you
The
minutes.
make them
contract
pay you
didn't. The contract
before?
didn't say you got to be funny. Contract said you got to do 60 minutes.
Right.
You didn't say nothing about funny,
Mm-hmm.
Don't
but you said 60 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'll be up here for
Right.
60 minutes.
Right.
Don't you make them give you the check before though? Like you
I don't think
wait.
they usually
No, I feel
do.
like they would give
But
it
these are
after.
colleges. They're
Right,
good.
they're-
They're good for it. But
Yeah.
they just the only reason they might not pay you is if you didn't do your time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had a corporate gig in Salt Lake City. It was 2 months ago, whatever, and they weren't even listening, and nobody's laughing. And
Jesus.
I had to do 45 minutes. I'm like, well, unless the CEO of the company tells me I can leave,
Right.
I'm staying up here for 45 minutes.
Sure.
You can
Oh.
you know,
You're not going to risk
Yeah.
it. You're not going to risk them being like,
Yeah.
oh, damn, we checked the contract
Yeah.
and right.
Right,
It's like,
so,
you know what? I'll stay.
I don't believe
I'm
that
gonna stand,
nobody
I'm
was
gonna
laughing.
stand up here. I finally got them a little bit with making fun of myself. I had to like kind of make fun of how this was going. This was awful.
Oh, gee.
You know, and then a little bit. I said, "Well, yeah, like the guy that booked me. I guess you're out of a. You're not coming back here next year either. You know, and stuff like that. You know,
That's funny.
And then I,
Right.
a little bit, but even then it wasn't great
Right.
because a lot of times at these corporate shows, they're there to
Yeah.
mingle and mix.
Right. I
They-
think somebody thinks the comedy is going to be a good idea.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not what they want. They're like, we're going to sit around and drink and
Yeah,
whatever,
and-
bullshit with each other.
Right.
And someone's like, but you know what we need? It's
Yeah.
like, but we don't though.
Yeah, we don't. We don't,
need-
and they don't know, and
Right.
but you know,
Right, you
but
know.
you know
We
that,
always
but
know.
you know that there's a check.
Sure.
So you're like,
right. We'll do
all right.
it.
You're like, they're like, oh, you know, it'd be a great idea. We're having this, and we're gonna surprise them with a comedy
Right.
show. And you're thinking that's the stupidest idea I
Yes,
ever heard.
exactly.
But they're like, oh,
Yeah.
by the way, it pays 10 grand,
Right.
and you're like, that's a great idea.
Yeah, you're right. You're
But why don't you tell them not to make it a surprise?
But sometimes it's delicate because, first of all, they might they're all excited, like, oh, I got this
They
great
think
idea.
it's a great idea.
They think it's a great
Yeah.
idea, and if you say that's a shitty idea, they're like, they may be saying, well, then maybe I won't do it.
Right.
Like, you don't want to take the check. Like, you're like, oh, this is going to be awful, but I want that check.
Right.
like
And the
this,
person pitching it's like, and then what'll happen is they're going to think it's dinner, but we're going to be like, no, it's Dan.
Yeah. They're going to say, oh, we're going to bring up sometimes they'll be like, oh, I'm going to say we're going to bring up like, the regional sales director.
Jesus
Christ. But it's going to be you.
Yeah. You're like, terrible, but let's do it. Because they're going to be like, your ideas are all
like
terrible.
a terrible idea. It's like, how bad do you want the money? How much
Yeah,
money is it? Like,
exactly.
you're weighing all this shit. You're like, okay, it's going to be awful, but then I get to go home with some money,
Okay, but listen, and I defer because I know that you've been doing this much longer than I have, but anytime I've done a corporate gig or a private gig, based on what people who have been doing it much longer than I have told me, they have told me that you have to tell them, no, it can't be a surprise. Everybody has to know that there's a comedy show. And then I get like information from like the HR person about like the specific people in the company. And they think that is the funniest thing in the world. Because, I mean, that sounds like such a recipe for disaster.
Well, look, if you can persuade them then and preserve the gig, then yeah, I guess if you feel comfortable, telling them no, it's got to be this way and this way.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do tell them that and they don't do it anyway.
Right.
You can tell them, okay, here's what you need to do. Like this gig I had for this roofing conference in Vegas.
Oh my God.
No, it went great though. You know why? Because they had a separate room. They said, anybody that wants to see a comedy show, go to this room. If you do not want to see a comedy show, do not go to this room.
Great.
And it was great because the only people that were there, and I think I even may have charged something for it, which is even better because then you really got a motivated audience.
Right.
But even if not, you can't spring this shit on people. You can't have people milling about and like, hey, everybody. So, and you can tell them that. And you're right. If you can tell them that and get them to actually do it.
Yeah.
But sometimes you get to the gig and they're like, they didn't do it. And then what do? You go home?
No. I said, and there has to be like, I had a private gig recently, like a corporate thing. I said, and there has to be like a special area with a stage that like, or ish, that like people know. And I was basically performing, out of like the bathroom.
And they may not have a separate area depending on the space that they have. This was a huge conference in a hotel. They had plenty of rooms, but
So you like the roofers?
it was a great audience. Yeah. I mean, I think we talked about
We
it.
did talk about it a little bit. But we can talk about it again. It's okay.
Well, I opened with like, oh, I'm really at the peak of my career. With roofer jokes.
Did you have like a whole arsenal of roofer jokes?
I had a couple. I didn't even have to have that. As I posted on Facebook, I'm performing for roofers, and people would.
Oh, that's funny. They made the jokes.
They
That's
sent
funny.
in these roof jokes.
That's great.
That's very.
You know?
Can you tell us another roof joke?
I don't know if I remember. Well, that'll. If you want to put something about putting a slant on it. Anyway, that kind of shit.
Right.
There was before the show, I walked around to see, just to get ideas, and there was this roofers in recovery table,
Oh.
and
Are you serious?
yeah,
Whatever this is, I'm into
there's
it.
a roofers in recovery table for roofers that are in recovery, right? So I just joked, where are the roofers in recovery? I said, well, now the roofer is not in recovery. They're not here because they were, they overslept because it was in the afternoon.
Okay.
So I should have said that in the first place. But the roofers in rehab. Yeah, there was, I don't know. I made some joke about like they're not here because they were up all night drinking. So
That seems
anyway.
like a very dangerous job to do. Drunk.
It probably is. It probably is.
Like specifically.
It'd be a bad idea.
Anyhow,
So they're not all bad, the corporate gigs.
no, but I would say at least 60-70% are bad.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I'm just not good at them. I think some comics probably are good at those.
Right. But I think it's the same thing. Sometimes you just set up to fail because it's just like they think this idea is great and
it's just not.
right. And it shouldn't be happening, or they're eating, or it's just something that's making it too hard.
That's the other thing that I learned to say. You can't serve food while I'm performing.
Right. Again, you can say it, and
Right.
maybe
you
they'll
can say
do
there's
it.
sometimes.
But maybe they'll be serving food anyway.
Right.
Right.
And what are you going to do? You're going to go home
No, of course
and
not.
fight with them and say, well, you said it. And maybe you'll get paid?
No,
Now, if you-
no, you're not going to do that. But I do feel like, especially you at your stage, you can have like a list of here's the content.
Yeah, you can have a list,
And
and then you
you're
get
right,
there, and then they don't, and they're
Right.
not doing
They
it.
didn't.
Right.
So what do you? Again, you say, "Well, I'm leaving,"
No,
And-
you're not
and
going
then
to
you-
say I'm leaving.
and then you
obviously.
fight, and maybe what are you going to take him to court? You're better off just doing the damn thing.
Just
You know,
start
and
the
if-
clock and let the clock run.
Let
out.
the clock run
Let the
out.
clock run
The,
out.
the
Just
hour,
get up there and just like get through your fucking
Yeah.
material.
the hour is going to come and go.
It's gonna yes.
The hour will end with the 45 minutes. And, you know, and if you're still standing,
you will get paid.
you're going to
You'll
get
get
paid, you know, and then, you know, have a drink and
and then it's over.
you know, and then it's over. Yeah. I mean, that's really what you got to do. Now, if, you know, Seinfeld might be able to say, look, this is the way it's going to be, or I'm
Sure.
leaving. And,
Right.
and you're going to pay me up front. So there's not going to be an issue. And maybe he's got the muscle to do that. But, you know, I don't.
Do you have a list that you like hand them before you go?
Well, my manager, you know, tells them this is how it should be. And again, we hope that they listen,
Mhm.
you know, but they may not. So, and yet, but I still prefer as bad as though I still prefer that to doing a whole weekend at a club where you got to do like 2 Friday, 2 Saturday,
Right,
one
yes.
Saturday, you know, like the whole,
Yes.
even if they're great shows, I'd rather do one shitty show
And then
than a whole weekend
Right.
of amazing shows
Right.
Why?
because it's a whole weekend.
And it just gives you agita.
I don't like it. Yeah, it's more agita. I don't like 2 shows in one night.
I know you don't.
And
I know you don't like 2 shows in one night.
and the whole weekend, you know.
But you don't mind.
And
doing-
oftentimes the corporate, and it's usually the same money. And oftentimes the corporate gigs, it's a nicer venue. It's a nicer like a nice hotel. It's not a Hampton Inn.
Mm.
Like the Roofers, I was at the Paris Hotel in Vegas.
Well, shout out to the fucking roofers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
apparently,
Right.
They're running.
And it was a good show anyway. But I'm saying like the show in, you know, Salt Lake City, it's a nice. It wasn't the Hampton Inn.
They're
which is
treating you nice.
Oftentimes,
Yeah.
yeah, it's usually a nicer
Nice,
operation.
nice,
And, you know, even though the show isn't so great.
Right.
But you don't mind like 2 shows in a night if it's like you're doing half an hour.
Yeah,
you
if
just
it's
don't
less.
like doing an hour.
I don't
back
like
to back.
doing that. I don't. Yeah. I don't want to have in my head that I got another show while I'm doing the show that I'm
Sure.
doing. I'm thinking about that other
Right.
show. And then sometimes, I mean, I've done 3, but not in a while, and I won't. But I have done 3 45-minute shows, which is
Like-
just
Yeah.
in one night.
awful. Yeah,
Isn't that
one
what
night.
you do on the cruises though? Isn't it like a
Mm.
couple of shows a
But
night?
they're half hour.
Half hour.
Yeah.
Okay. I've never done a cruise. That sounds.
I've never
about
done
the
right.
ones that I've done have been like 25 minutes to a half hour. But and if you have to do 45, it'll be 2 shows at most. It won't be 3.
And that also you have to be clean and no politics and all.
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, there is like one I'm told like the one night you got to do clean, and then the next night you can be dirty. But dirty for a cruise is not the same as
Sure.
as you know Jim Norton talking about sucking his wife's cock.
Right.
Although maybe I don't know, but it's dirty for them, But Jim is one of the few comics I'll go listen to
Mhm.
because I just he. I mean, I've probably said this before. Him and Keith Robinson are the only right, and if David Tell, but he always goes on later. I'm usually
Right.
gone by then. But Keith and Norton, because they're both talking about shit that literally nobody else is talking about. Keith about having a stroke, and Jim
Right.
about having a trans wife.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And are you sitting there and cracking up?
No, I'm not even. Well, sometimes, like, I mean, but more. I'm just like, this is interesting. This is like I'm more into
Right.
interesting now than
Yes.
funny. I'm just say something interesting. Tell me
Right.
about an interesting. Like Hannah Gadsby. Like I didn't laugh, but that's kind of interesting.
Okay.
You're learning in a way too. You're
know.
like, oh, okay.
So who are you? Your go to that you would most like to hear at the Cellar?
Well, it's funny. I'll say whenever it's late, if I'm like close enough to when a tell goes up,
Yeah.
then I'll stay. But it is that thing of all of a sudden I'm like, it's 2:30 in the
Yeah,
morning.
he's always up late.
What just happened? But yeah, because it's like you want to see it, but I'm like, oh, how can I not? No, and it is always fun to see Jim and Keith too. They usually go up earlier, so that's easier.
Dave, like every people ask me who this is the most common question comics get, I think. Well, other than like, where do you get your jokes?
Right.
Or do you write your own jokes? Is who are your favorite comics?
Mhm.
And I will usually say Attell is one of them, and they've never heard of him.
That's crazy.
Because, now comedy fans maybe have,
Sure,
but a
sure.
corporate guy like, the manager of the country club in Key Largo that I played at,
Oh,
Alfredo.
Oh my God.
He'll know Chris Rock or
Right.
Kevin Hart or what have you, but they don't know Attell. He's like, not to say that he's not well known, but he's not famous like those guys.
Mhm.
And
Right,
yet,
especially if you're not a comedy fan, I guess. Like
And-
for me, I remember watching like Insomniac. Like there's so much of Dave that I feel like is the industry.
Dave is the comics' favorite.
Yeah, Dave is
Yeah.
every comic will say Attell.
He'll at least be in their top 5, probably top
For
3.
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I have never come across a comic who has not said that Attell is one of their favorite comics, which is kind of the best compliment as a comic to
Sure.
get, right? That
Yeah.
other comics think that you're funny.
Right. And he certainly has plenty of fans and,
Mhm.
and does
Sure,
well.
sure.
He's just not Kevin Hart in terms of, Kevin Hart's, I think, the highest paid comic in America. Something like that.
Not that anybody asked me, but I do enjoy watching you. I'm
Thank-
not just saying that. That's always really fun. And I love watching Yamanika.
Yes.
She is really fun to watch. And Jessica Curson.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I like watching there are a lot of comics that I just really enjoy watching.
Maxwell, how about you?
I've gone to see Bobby Kelly a lot.
Oh, Bobby's
Yeah.
great. I love watching Bobby.
Yeah. I like Keith. I got to see Keith's Netflix taping. That was really fun. And I like Attell a lot too.
Oh, you saw Keith's special?
Yeah, I went
He's
to
a
the
taping.
live taping at the Sony Theater, I think.
No, I don't know where it was.
I think it was.
It was.
Yeah.
I went to Rachel's taping before that. She was also
Oh,
great.
nice.
That was so
Big week.
fun.
Yeah.
Big week.
Yeah, I like watching
Big
Rachel too. I
Rachel's
like watching
great.
Rachel too, especially since she started talking about her husband,
Yeah.
fireman. Because I'm more interested now at this
Sure,
point.
Matt.
In this point, I just want to hear like some interesting point of view or take, or Attell being the exception. He's just jokes.
Right.
Rachel, when Rachel was taping her special, there was Pete, her husband, was right in front of me with all of his fireman friends,
that's-
and that was so funny to watch because they were just all the guys were just dying laughing, and it was really fun.
Well, she definitely got a lot of mileage out of that
Yeah.
out of that marriage.
Keep it going.
But and well, we're running out of time, but we can end on your personal life
Oh my. Oh sure.
if you
Well, Regina,
Well. What is it you'd like to know?
well, are you with someone?
I'm married.
Oh, you're married?
It'll
I
be
don't think I knew that.
It'll be 10 years in September,
Wow.
which is crazy too, which goes by fast.
Is he DeCicco or you're?
No, I didn't change my last
Okay.
name.
Well, why would you?
Right.
Your name is
it's too fun.
DeCicco.
It's too fun.
It's
are
so
you
much fun.
Chico
and
of like?
Sons, the supermarkets, yes.
Oh my God, you're my favorite supermarket.
That's so funny. Where were you shopping?
Well, where's
That's
DeCicco? What's DeCicco in?
So they're in Westchester. So my family has a very successful supermarket business that I didn't go into, Dan, to pursue my dream.
Oh,
wow.
my
yeah.
God, I can't believe you're
Isn't that funny?
DeCicco.
This is your parents?
Yeah, so my dad started with two of his brothers. So my
Okay.
dad, they were born in Italy, and my dad was born in Italy, and then the business started here with like his two brothers.
Do you love how starstruck I am
That's
right now?
hysterical. And it's like so, and that's what like I did growing up, and I always worked at the supermarket.
No
Okay.
But,
way.
like when I got to the when
I
got
never
to-
heard of this
Yeah,
supermarket.
Oh my
it's called
God, it's
Westchester
so
mostly.
good. I'm
Huge
gonna
in
take you.
Westchester. People like to say, "I'm going to DeCicco's."
Yeah.
I'm going to DeCicco's.
But it's successful, but it's not Gristides successful.
No, but it's not gross like Gristides. It's like a
Gross.
nice supermarket.
Is Gristides gross?
Yes.
Okay.
DeCicco's, it's like high end now
The
because they're
Italians love
Italian
supermarkets,
because they
you know?
understand food.
Yeah.
So you
Right,
have
they're
it's
food
like
people.
it's like Whole Foods, but Whole Foods isn't actually that good. Let's be
And
honest.
then my brother does a lot of like the buying, so he gets a lot of like the Italian specialty items.
so they have really yes. Oh my God.
That's so funny. So that they literally made the DeCicco and Sons. So then, like, if I'm in Westchester, it's like, oh, everybody but Regina. That's what they did.
Hysterical. Not and daughters.
Yeah, they did everything.
Well, what if you?
But I didn't go into it. So,
but if you did go into it, and nobody calls it business and sons and daughters,
right? I don't know.
And kids and offspring.
I don't know what they would
and
have done.
and how about that?
Co.
Like a gender neutral. Like a gender neutral.
And what do you mean and co?
Like and company. Like DeCicco and company.
Oh, can you do that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Like there's something
but also and daughters. I've never heard.
What do you mean, Russ and daughters?
Except for Russ and daughters.
Right. Except the exception.
Except the one. The exception that proves the rule.
I can't think of another one.
DeCicco family market.
It's tough because we don't want to. They're not going to turn this into all being about DeCicco's.
Well,
there was like a family split, so then there's some that are. That's why then they like distinguish what's DeCicco and Sons. Then it might be like DeCicco Family Market. So it was like two different.
Ooh.
But all like when it went from the first generation to the second generation, they like I don't want to say housekeeping, but like did a little bit of a split, and that was when the name change came.
Well, what's your husband's name?
John.
No, last name.
Coogan.
Oh, Coogan. Okay.
Right. So
And what does he do?
he engineers fire sprinkler systems.
Shut
not
up.
in the.
Oh my God.
not in the
Did
business
you
at all.
meet him in a show?
No, I wasn't doing stand up when I met
Okay.
him, which I feel like was almost like a saving grace a little bit. So like we got into the world together and then he just like backed off. He's like, yeah, do whatever this is.
Whatever this
But
is.
it was like enough where at the beginning he was excited and then he's like, I'm not coming with you all the time. Why? So
My husband felt the same way. He's like,
And-
this was not part of our deal when I met you. I don't know what the fuck you're doing.
but I think he's obviously it worked out. So it was like a bit of a gamble. But then
But being married also that makes the job at the View even more important because
right.
you know if you were single you could
Right.
you know.
But it's so nice to be like, oh, I can go home
Yeah.
and you're here. And that's great. No, very much. Yes. That's a great point. It's very true.
Yeah, a lot of male comics meet women at shows.
Yes.
I think with female comics it's less of a thing.
I don't think it's as much. But it is fun to like, well, not fun, but I will see the women, like even at Olive Tree, spot certain male comics that's like, you know, like they want to go over and then talk to everyone. And it's like, it's such a funny, like that doesn't really happen.
Isn't that such a funny phenomenon that nobody comes over to women comics? Like, oh my God, you're so funny.
Well,
because guys don't care.
Yeah, it's not as much of a.
Yeah, it's a
different thing. I mean, are you hot? You know,
right. That's it's unfucking believable. Don't you think that's incredible?
I don't know if it's incredible. It's striking. It's interesting. It's, you know, but
unless
I
you're a
don't know
lesbian comic, in which case it probably does help.
I mean, I will say that I'm a comic, so I'm not starstruck by comics, but a female musician will get my attention more than like she would have otherwise.
If she's hot, though.
Yes, but it adds another point or two.
But comic,
it definitely
no.
adds another point or two.
But funny, no.
Well, I'm a comic, so I'm just less like. If I weren't, it's hard for me to say. I've been a comic for so damn long, and it's. But
you have no appreciation for the art form.
No, I'm saying probably but it's hard to say because, like I said, I've been a comic for a while. But definitely, like I met Sarah Bareilles here.
Okay,
I hung out with her. Matter of fact,
well,
because she was a friend of another comic. But anyway, and she's cute, but she's not like drop dead gorgeous, but she's Sarah Bareilles,
right?
So I was like, yeah, I'll marry you.
Did you tell her that?
No.
Okay. Now, do you
the
think
offer wasn't? I mean, I don't know that she would have been willing, but
you're like, all right, I'll do it. I'll marry you.
But it added to her. She's cute anyway, but it added another point or two to the whole thing.
Do you think that it's like that in other industries, like surgeons? Like, do you think they're like, oh, that woman's such a good surgeon? Like, that's kind of like a turn on.
Yeah, I mean, if a woman's
being good at what you do as a woman is totally irrelevant.
I don't think it's irrelevant. As I said, I think it adds a point or two. Yeah, for me.
So if you met a doctor or a surgeon, like a woman,
and they were attractive, that would definitely,
if she were
definitely bump it up.
attractive.
Definitely, well, yeah, they got to be at least that, but it would definitely bump it up.
Right.
Yeah,
now, see, that's the difference, though, because men don't need to actually be attractive. Like, I think that's the difference is that like you can be really funny or
Right.
great
And I think-
thoracic
But
surgeon.
I think then the guy just becomes so much more attractive.
Yeah,
to
that's
Yeah,
right.
the guy
right?
will
It's
be
like they-
attractive.
right.
That's
They're
right.
turning
The
a
guy-
guy that's like, okay, to like, oh my God.
or
Yeah.
like actively unattractive, like
But,
like actually like aggressively not attractive. It doesn't fucking matter. That's
I think
the difference.
a guy can make unattractive cool. Like,
Like, that's called
Steve
patriarchy.
Buscemi.
Right.
I don't think you could argue this man is a classic beauty, but he somehow pulls it off.
That's what I'm
You know?
saying, though. Like
Peter Dinklage, the guy's a little person, is cool as fuck.
Yeah.
right? Nobody's saying that about like Rhea Perlman.
Yeah, God
Right.
bless her.
God bless her.
So
Yeah,
Like amazing
yeah.
and adorable.
it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
fucked
Yeah, I
up.
know it's terrible. I don't make the rules.
No.
Don't look at me.
But it is. It's interesting to watch.
You're saying don't hate the player. Hate
Yeah, I hate the game. Hate the game.
And we have a title
Hate it
for this
all, hate it all.
episode, ladies and gentlemen.
There he is.
What was that, Peter Dinklage?
Yeah.
Yeah, he fucking.
I've seen him here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, look
I-
at
I-
her. She's gorgeous.
Right.
I've never seen him here, but
seen him out
I
on the
did meet him years ago before he was any because at the Luna Lounge, which you probably don't even remember. It used
I
to be
mean-
a show there every Monday.
He's cute. That's not the point. Or even like Philip Seymour Hoffman, right? Like he wasn't like a good-looking guy, but
Talent. Yeah, that talent for a man takes it to another level.
nobody cares if you're
And
talented.
unfortunately, again, I did not. Don't look at me. I
You're
Make
not.
it stop, Dad.
I know it's unfortunate. I'll agree with you. You're getting no argument here.
I'm just happy we have a title for this episode.
Okay.
Under the gun too. Almost seemed like it was going to go without a title. That or shop at DeCicco.
Well,
the commercial.
DeCicco-
I'm trying to walk away.
Is there a commercial?
There's not a commercial.
I'm surprised you don't have like one of those like cheap, local business
Well,
commercials
okay,
like
well, they used to-
1-800.
They used
Call
to.
Carmel
It's funny you
for-
bring this up.
No.
Now it's on a totally different level. But when I was in high school, yes, there was a local commercial.
Okay.
And one year they had like a little DeCicco
Yeah.
jingle, and they sponsored the school closings because you'd have to listen to school closings on the
okay.
radio. So whenever school was closed, they'd play the DeCicco's jingle. And then one year we had so much snow we missed a whole week of school. So every time everyone heard the little song, everyone was like, there was no school. So then we had I didn't participate in the talent show, but at one point something had gone wrong and everyone was like, oh, Regina, get on stage. Like it took me a while to do stand up, but I was always a funny person. So they made me get on stage and then I sang the little jingle just to be like ridiculous because there was like a little hold up.
Now, did you grow up in Westchester?
No, I grew up in Rockland County actually. So it used to be like the stores were not where everybody lived, but then one by one, everyone's kind of gone from Rockland to Westchester.
Interesting.
Okay, so DeCicco's for all your
That's right.
food.
Your food needs, your catering needs. Listen,
It's
They
the
do
real
catering.
deal.
They have kosher food as well.
Sure.
For our religious listeners,
Yes.
our Orthodox listeners.
right? Everyone.
Regina DeCicco, thank you so much for joining us. That was
Oh no!
I
Thanks
thought
so much for having
thought
me.
it
It
was-
was
Thank
such
you.
a little treat.
I thought so.
I was like, oh, I would love to come.
Dan,
You brought the energy.
Thanks,
You
Dan.
know,
you did a good job.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You always do.
Well, I thank you for that.
Yeah.
So Regina, she's here all the time.
I'm here
Where
all the
can
time.
everybody find you?
You're at the Comedy Cellar.
Yeah, right here at the Comedy Cellar.
And if they're not physically within like a
They
wa-
could just Google Regina DeCicco, REGINA DE. This is where it gets complicated.
CICCO.
DECCC. Is that your jingle? DECICCO. DeCicco's is the place to go.
I mean, let's go record right now.
DECICO.
The place to go.
That's like the quality of music you get with a local commercial.
No, of course.
Yeah, you're not gonna get like a really cool, high quality jingle.
Right.
I
no,
thought
no,
that-
You
I
like
thought that
the
was-
band. You're not gonna get Band-Aid brand
no.
I thought that was great.
or
God,
Catch That Pepsi Spirit. If you remember that one from the 80s. Catch that Pepsi Spirit. Drink it in, drink it in, drink it in. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen,
DeCicco's Markets. And Regina DeCicco, Imperial Ashen Brand, Imperial AESCHENBRAND.
very nice.
Look at you.
And Dan Natterman, his book, I Respiro Before COVID, still available on Amazon. They have not run out of copies, and they never will. because that's not how it works. And we thank Max, the sound guy.
Yes, we do.
Thank you so much, everybody. Max,
Marcus.
what's your last name again? Marcus.
Marcus,
Okay, bye-bye, everybody.